You space bastard! You killed my pan!
Oh boy. Terror Train from 1980. So, the reason I watched this is a very bad movie, but it was New Year's Eve and I wasn't going out, so I wanted to watch a movie that took place on New Year's Eve. You know, there's a lot of Christmas movies, a lot of Halloween movies. Usually find some Thanksgiving movies. Sometimes there's random movies for certain holidays, and I couldn't think of too many movies that were solely dedicated around New Year's Eve. There's obviously some movies that have a New Year's Eve scene, like Forrest Gump or something like that, but not a lot are wholly set on New Year's Eve. So I just did a search. I was like interested in some movies to look through or choose between. There was one that came up. I saw it, Terror Train. It's an 80s horror slasher film, and I've been getting into those more. So I was like, oh, I'll check it out. It's got Jamie Lee Curtis in it. I was like, I'll give it a try. I saw the director. There's a guy named Roger Spottiswoode, which I recognized the name. I didn't know exactly who he was or what other movies he'd done, but I thought it sounded familiar. So when I looked him up, he did Tomorrow Never Dies, the James Bond film with Pierce Brosnan, Sixth Day, the clone movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Turner and Hooch, Tom Hanks. So he's got some good films under his belt. So I was like, okay, this might be decent. This is actually his first film that he directed. A lot of directors start with horror movies because they're cheap to make. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. So we start out with a group of sorority and frat. It's a frat and a sorority at a college. They're having a New Year's Eve party, and they pull this prank on a guy. And the prank is that they're gonna have. He's supposed to go up to a bedroom, and it's supposed to be Jamie Lee Curtis's character. It's supposed to be up there waiting for him, and they're supposed to have sex together for the first time or whatever. And his name's Kenny, and Alana is Jamie Lee Curtis. But instead of her being in bed when he gets up there, she's hiding, talking him into the bed or whatever. But they put a dead body in the bed because some of the frat guys, well, most of them are pre-med students. So that's the prank that they pull, and the kid kind of goes loopy or whatever. We don't really learn it till later, but it kind of messed him up in the head. Foreshadowing. I'm not gonna recommend this film, so I might spoil things here and there. No, it's not a big loss. But anyways, that happens at the very beginning. Then we cut to like 3 years later, so they're all seniors. And that was part of a... Okay, it's really weird, because that was part of a pledge prank. These guys are pledges, and that's the prank they pull on Kenny. But then they cut to 3 years later, and they're seniors, and it's the same group of guys. But I'm like, so... Wait a minute, I know how fraternities work. If they're seniors now, and they were pulling a prank on a pledge 3 years ago, wouldn't that mean they were all in the same class? And why would pledges be pranking other pledges? Or why would freshmen be doing that to other freshmen? It didn't make any sense. So I was like, okay, problem number one, of which there will be many in this film. But, yeah, there's not a lot about this plot that makes sense. But, so it's 3 years later, it's New Year's Eve, and it's the same groups, the same sorority and fraternity, and they've rented out a train for this New Year's Eve party. It's a costume party. So, for one thing, was that common in the 80s to rent out a train for a party? If it was, that's awesome. I'd love to throw a party on a train, but I thought that was weird. And of course, right away at the beginning, they say there's no radio on the train. They've had problems with it. Right away, there's like a scene of the conductors and stuff, and they're like, man, we really need some radios on this train. Foreshadowing, they're not gonna have radios. So yeah, they're at this train, and they're just gonna have a party. And like I said, it's a costume party, which made me think, if you're having a costume party, why not just set it during Halloween? I mean, how many people have costume parties on New Year's Eve? I guess maybe that was a big thing, because isn't that what they do on Trading Places? They're on a train, and they have a big costume party there too. So, I don't know, maybe that's just something that fell out of favor. I guess it seemed like back in the 70s and 80s, they're having a lot of New Year's Eve parties, costume parties. So maybe we should bring that back. Let's all bring back Halloween, or costume See, I'm already confusing myself. Let's bring back costume parties during New Year's Eve. That'd be fun on trains, except we don't have trains really, so it doesn't work. Um, and that had Jamie Lee Curtis in it too, Trading Places. So, ooh, a lot of self references there. So they're just having this pretty much they're just having this party on a train, and somebody slips on a costume and they start killing people all over the train. So that's the plot. And the first guy they kill, if you see the poster on my blog or you look on IMDb page, is a Groucho Marx costume. That's the first person he kills wearing that costume, and he takes it, and that's what he does. That's his shtick, I guess. Is he'll kill somebody and take the costume, and then he goes and terrorizes the rest of the train. And so that's it. I mean, it's a slasher film from the '80s, and that's the whole thing, that he's gonna kill people on the train for the prank that they pulled on him when he was younger, and he's gonna get back at all of them. So he's pretty much just targeting, I think, he's mostly targeting the people that were in on the prank that 3 years ago. It's really funny too, because on the train they hired a magician to do a bunch of magic, and I guess he's okay. And I was like, this guy looks sort of familiar. It's David Copperfield, the big magician, is the guy that's on the train doing magic. It's pretty funny. Like I mentioned, Jamie Lee Curtis is pretty much the main protagonist, and this is right in the middle of the films that labeled her as the Scream Queen. So she did Halloween, of course, in '78, which is classic. It's a phenomenal film. And then she did this in '80, and she also did Prom Night in 1980, same year, which I want to watch that. I think that's supposed to be better. It can't be any worse than this. I mean, it's pretty bad. She did Prom Night, and then after this she did an Australian film called Road Games in '81. So I think those were the main films that kind of cemented her as the Scream Queen. But then she did more, obviously. She did The Fog later with Carpenter and some other ones. But so this is like right in the middle of her ascension in horror film. And then there's another guy that plays one of the... I don't know if he's a conductor or he's one of the train operator guys, because he's not really the guy at the front conducting, but I don't know, you call him a porter. No, see, we don't travel on trains, so I don't know the terminologies for these guys, but he's like the head guy on the train. He's played by an actor named Ben Johnson. I didn't recognize him, but he has a lot of films in his on his IMDb page, and I think he won an Oscar for The Last Picture Show or something like that. And I think he's in The Wild Bunch. He's a well-known actor, but he's kind of older in this. So, anyways, his character's kind of annoying. He seems pretty, like, I don't know if he's sexist or not, but these guys are all med students, and he treats, like, Jamie Lee Curtis' character like she doesn't know anything, or she's just like a crazy female that needs to be restrained, and it's like, she's a doctor, she's okay at seeing these medical things. But yeah, like I mentioned, this is not a good movie. You don't actually get to see any of the kills, so that's like a big thing with the Friday the 13th movies and stuff, is inventing or coming up with inventive ways to do these kills for each person. And these you actually don't really see them. They'll cut away and then they'll be dead, or so again, it's probably a big budget thing. They couldn't afford a lot of money for makeup effects and all that, so they had to cut away and then show them being dead. But this is I guess because I'm so familiar with the really good, the good slasher films and the good horror films from the 80s, and I like a lot of them. I'm starting to get into them more. I mean, Halloween, of course, Friday the 13th is good, but then there's so many of them. They just made all of these knockoff slasher films, and this is one of the first ones that I've seen that's is really bad, just kind of a bad take on the slasher genre and trying to ride the coattails of the other good ones. But so yeah, definitely not worth a watch. I'm only giving it a 1.75 out of 5. It's very low. I actually watched this on YouTube. The whole thing's on there, but definitely not worth a watch. I mean, unless you're just super hardcore Jamie Lee Curtis fan or something and you need to see it, or if you're just trying to watch every single slasher film ever, I guess. I doubt you're a Roger Spottiswoode fanatic, the director, but definitely worth a skip. So I think the next slasher film or Jamie Lee Curtis slasher film I'll probably watch is Prom Night. So hopefully that's better. So I'll see you back for that one. So, okay.